what's going on? How's everybody doing? I hope you all are. Please hit that like button. Please hit that like button if you are not subscribed. Please subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel if you are not yet subscribed. I left that same fist up. If you from Patreon, you know I left that same fist up from last night. Yes, I did. Because it's just as important today. It's just as important. I was like, should I take it down? I was like, no. We're going to be talking about some of the same stuff today that we talked about yesterday. For those who aren't with us. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, it's patreon.com/ycarnell. So if you so desire, but you're here with us right now, right tonight. So that is absolutely wonderful. I hope you all are looking forward to the holiday. But anyway, fam, listen. You know, I was watching some of that I was watching some of that JFK stuff. I was watching some of that the CIA stuff. I was watching some of that. And it kind of, that's too loud. I'm playing DJ over here too. It kind of occurs to me like what you have to be and who you have to be as a group to try to demand anything. Listen, if they can allegedly do what they're alleged to have done or is alluded to in those documents, I don't know. Listen, if they can do that, then you have to know that you're going to have your stuff all the way together in order to do stuff, in order to do politics in this country. Now, having your stuff all the way together absolutely includes, I'm going to put this up, reading stuff like this when it comes out, and deciding how you feel about it. Now, those of you all who have not seen this, and this is why people kind of diverge from us, they just like, I don't really want to be Yvette be having us do all this stuff. I really ain't that into that stuff she be trying to have us do. I really ain't even into it. I don't even like it that much. She always telling us to read and read and read. Well, this bridging the divide, building an economy that works for all. This is a congressional report, and it's very interesting in what it does say. So it's at fairgrowthhouse.gov. So you can find it, you can look it up. It's there, but it's very, very, very interesting, fam. It's very, very interesting in terms of how they decide what solutions look like. So we're at this weird kind of era, right? We're at this weird kind of era where people can talk about lineage and call it race, or talk about the invention of race, which is like what it did to a specific lineage. You can talk about that, but they will not really talk about specifics as it relates to us in terms of what to do about it. Now, if you want to see what I'm talking about, now stay with me. Because I know a lot of people, I thought you was going to talk about Dion again or something. No, we talking politics today. Buttercup, do try to stay with me, okay? Do try to stay with me. Now listen, this is people who think things are getting better. I'm gonna bring this chart all the way up, but I just want to read a little bit of it for you. Those with above average wealth tend to live. I gotta stand up, child. Oof. Let me see. Those with above average wealth tend to live in neighborhoods where schools are better and associate with those who know of job or business opportunities. Now, what they're describing to us right there is social capital, ladies and gentlemen. We've already been through social capital. We know what social capital is. They have more freedom to set their own schedules and find it easier to risk a move, a new job, and early retirement. You know who does not have that? That's ADA. Now, let me show you what it says when we bring the chart all the way up. We're just going to go through some of the things. Income and wealth are increasingly concentrated in the top quintile. Now, we started talking about that when we started talking about Piketty, did we not? We've already been here. We know this, but that's fine. I'm happy that y'all are getting around to talking about some stuff that we already talked about. That's interesting because I want you to find a solution from here. Now, let's keep going. We're not going to be here all day, but this requires a level of seriousness. Now, this is not child's play what we're dealing with right here. This is not just just talking to hear ourselves talk. That's all. It is important to understand that inequality itself is not evenly distributed among different segments of the American population, a fact that is often obscured by aggregated economic statistics. Wait a minute. They're saying, yeah, they're saying that when you wait a minute, you sounding kind of like us now. The fact that it's obscured by aggregated economic statistics, that sounds a lot like disaggregation, don't it? That sounds a lot like why we testified before the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, right? That sounds like that. Now let's sound like they're cooking with some grease. Racial inequities are particularly stark. Median wages for black workers were just 3/4 those of white workers in 2019. Because unemployment rates are higher and labor force participation rates are lower, the earnings of black households are only half those of white households. Now, here's the thing. If you disaggregate further and don't leave it at black, you will find that ADOS is even lower than that. This is what we mean when we talk about black immigration lifting up our numbers and masking our failure. I bet that if you do an ADOS number there, I bet you'll find something very different. The typical black household has about 1/8 the wealth of its white counterpart. The huge wealth differential between white people and black people, as well as a host of disparities ranging from education and health to housing, cannot be understood without understanding of how such differences originate in a long history of racism. Well. Okay. Other racial disparities are also pronounced. Here we go. Now here's the problem. Hispanic household earnings average about half that of white households, and median net worth is just 1/5 the amount of the typical white family. Here's the problem. Let me come out of here. We're at this place. We're at this really weird place where you can't talk about, you really can't talk about, you can't say black without saying Latino. You can't say black without saying Hispanic. You can't say black without saying people of color. It's a forcing together. Eventually, the only thing they're going to say is BIPOC. BIPOC is the natural progression of this not being able to say a thing is a thing. And you obscure everything because you don't talk about who that Latino or Hispanic person is. You don't say whether they just got here. You don't say when they got here. You should really break, like if you're going to break Latinos and Hispanics up, like we, in making Hispanics, you see that it's a creation anyway. But if you want to break all immigrants up into categories, you have to include when they got here. Because if somebody just got here last year, 2 years ago, it's not necessarily, or 10 years ago, or, even further back than that, it's not necessarily a disparity that they're not making the same amount of money as somebody who's been here generations. They're not as anchored. So as they become more anchored, they'll make more. It's not necessarily a disparity. So when people say that this is necessarily a disparity because these people are where ADOS is, no, it's not. You're clumping us together. They have a reason, a lot of them, for why they're not doing as good as whites. They haven't been here as long as a lot of the whites. And you should even do that for white immigrants. When did y'all get here? What'd you do? And you could hash it all out. But there's a reason for, especially those who may be darker skinned, whatever, what have you. You can't understand that though if you lump them with us. So what if we have been victims of 400 years of multi-generational oppression, right? If we have been victims of that, if we're the only group, and we are, right, that's had this happen consistently. I'm not talking about somebody who was hung or at one point. I'm not talking about, my grandfather who is not ADOS was discriminated. I'm talking about consistently, right, over a 400-year time. If we're that group, we have a specific condition, and just because your condition is my condition is not the same, because my condition has happened over time. So we should never. If one of the things, if you want to rally against something right now, rally against this move to put us together with all other groups. Make journalists do the work of talking about whatever group you want to talk about over here and talking about whatever group you want to talk about over here. But what you don't get to do is put us together in the same group, because we don't have a lot in common. We do not have a lot in common. So that's you and you see that throughout this report. You see that throughout. So let me show you something else. Let's go in here. Let's go into this dwindling social mobility slide. Widening wealth and income equality have been accompanied by declining social mobility. As children from families with low or moderate wealth are less able to out-earn their parents than their ancestors 50 years ago, or their peers in other wealthy nations. This is disturbing for a country that has long considered itself the iconic land of opportunity. Not for us. It wasn't considered that way. Around 90% of children born in the 1940s grew up to out-earn their parents. Similar numbers out-learned their parents as college attendance rates shot up. Stories of upward mobility were popular in Hollywood and regularly featured in the news media. In contrast, American children born in the 1980s, millennials, could not expect the same. Only about 50% would out-earn their parents. Now, let me ask you something. If you're not going to out-earn your parents, why are you buying your parents a refrigerator? Like, if you in your lifespan as a parent have out-earned me, and you're going to do better than me, and I'm not going to do better, because the assumption has always been you're going to do better than me, or you are doing better than me. So since you are doing better than me, then maybe you can throw something back. Even though money flows down, money don't flow up anyway. White people whose parents did out-earn them, the money is flowing down. You're not going to, it's worse. Like the point I'm trying to drive home before I get to the other points is that everything that's bad is worse for us. And yes, you have to do a political thing. Yes, we have a political project, but you also have a family project. You also have a familial project. I said earlier today, who was it? Somebody tweeted, it's a trapper stockbroker or something I saw, and they tweeted something and they said, we can't get reparations until black people deal with multi-generational trauma. You saw what happened with the PPP loan. You saw what happened with the fraud and all that, right? And it's just just not understanding anything. Like if your thing is stocks, that's why I'm tired of the I used to be a shooter. I was a dope boy. I was in the street. I'm tired of y'all. Y'all just step in here and everybody elevates him. Oh, he was a dope boy. Oh, he was a shooter. He shot somebody before. How does that, the hip hop make everybody do that? Elevate somebody for that? The point of the matter is, if you understood the economics of America right now, you would understand it isn't about, hey, we can't take time. Because he was like, we should take time until the trauma. Well, first of all, sir, you're not a therapist. You're a former shooter who says good at stocks. You may be good at stocks. I don't know. I don't know you. I saw a tweet by you and I retweeted. You may be good at that, but you're not good at nothing else. So be quiet. Why can't people just be quiet and just not say anti-ADOS things? Because if I count Enron, if I count Bankman Fried, right? If I count all these white grand thefts of billions and multi-millions of dollars, nobody says, no, the whites can't get any more money and that's not a debt. They say, the whites can't get any more money because you see what they did? They ran off with the bag. That's just they did. They do all this theft and they just don't do good with money when they get a lot of it. They start thieving and start running off and peel. Nobody says that. And I think there's a reason why you saw a whole lot of these ADOS people and black people with fraud. Why did that happen? Maybe it's just racism the way the news covered it. The news didn't, there was a lot of fraud across the board, but a lot of people just didn't make it on the news. How is that? But if you understand what I just put up there, right? If you understand what I just said to you about you're not going to do better, like these millennials not doing better than your parents. So there has to be an activism where you are activated to protect yourself and protect your interests and explain to your parents, hey, I love you, but after you're gone, I have to live and nothing is really flowing down and I'm not going to do better than you. And in terms of the shooter or whatever who was talking about we shouldn't get it or whatever, it's not a matter of should we. It's a matter of a debt is owed, first of all. That's the first thing. A debt is absolutely owed. And if we don't get that payment, this is a cliff right here. We talk about the economic cliff. Every report that I put up shows that we're going right over it. Every report. You need that economic mobility. Let me show you this little chart. And this is Piketty again. Because you remember this whole thing started with Piketty. Children out-earning their parents is becoming less common. That's not just less common. That went all the way from the top. That went from 90 in 2000 and what was that? 1970 down to the bottom in 2014. That's not just less common. That means it's just not happening. That's not. I wouldn't even define that as less common. That means it's just not happening anymore. You're not going to out-earn your parents. That's a dream. Now they sold us that dream. They absolutely sold us that dream. You go to college, and that's what our parents supposed to fight for. Hey, I told my kid to go to college. They took on all that debt, and then what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to him? Well, we don't need to listen to your kid no more. We can listen to the trappers and the dope dealers and the former dope dealers. They the ones now. They do real estate. They do corner classes. They trap and stock at the same, whatever the hell. Like, they'll tell you. We've just replaced the people who were supposed to be like, oh, I studied this, I know this, let me talk to you about it. No, anybody can talk to you about anything. What? I really study politics. No. You don't understand, Yvette. Him over here. There's a real hierarchical problem in this community. No inheritance. See, you if I slow it down, you were supposed to be able to, what America told us. This is what America told us. America said you will be able to make up what you're missing in inheritance with income. You will be able to make up whatever you're missing in inheritance with income. That's what they promised. America said, don't worry about it. Just go to school. You go to school, you get a very good job. You'll out-earn your parents. You'll be able to build wealth multi-generationally because you will have income. We are meritocracy. That's what America said to us, and America lied. And America don't even lie to white people. You know they lied to us. So there is no move forward without that. And I'm not here, listen, I'm talking about people who follow the law. I'm not talking to people who try to wash money or stuff like that. I'm not talking to y'all. All of y'all who go into legit stuff because you got some dope money over here. I'm not talking to y'all. I don't live that life. I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen all day long. And I will prosecute to the furthest of the law if you mess with me. Listen, that's just what it is. I'm not talking to y'all though. Y'all have some other stuff going on. I'm talking about people who just follow the rules all their life. That's who I'm talking to. Your life is not looking good. And you're going to need reparations to do what you need to do. And you're going to need some policies to protect all that. But let me keep going. Now, they even got into race by talking about and talking to people like this gentleman and talk to him about, I'm not going to get into how he didn't access the GI Bill, how he was cheated out of it. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what he said. Army Sergeant First Class, retired 25 years. He said, I didn't get the chance. Now, before I get into this, I want to show you that they're building up to something. It sounds like they're building up to do something, doesn't it? So, I didn't get the chance of getting the GI, says Sergeant Johnny Cheatham from Kansas City, Missouri. I didn't receive the same benefits as the rest of the GIs because they got the GI Bill and got a house with a low interest rate. Financially, it was a bad deal for me. I was on my way to Vietnam and I had 5 kids and a wife. And if I got killed over there, I wanted them to have a place to stay. It was promised to you when you enlisted that you could get the GI Bill. Like many servicemen, Sergeant Cheatham tried to apply for the no money down, no interest rate home loan guaranteed to the GI Bill. However, he believes he was denied the loan because of the color of his skin. Well, your lineage really, but yeah. So the case is being built as you have something that's denied a specific group of people. A specific group of people have been denied something throughout life, throughout the lineage of our time being here. He did this. Now, we don't understand. We done gone to, we talking about what you were denied. That's a specific thing to a specific group of people. Doesn't it look like we're building up to something very kind of specific? Well, it's got a little class in here too. It's got a little class politics in here too. So let's go to this part because we're not going to be here that long. The Reagan administration, it's funny when they start this. Let me show you how important language is. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Hold on. I just want to show you how important language is when people start to have these conversations. The Reagan administration paired tax cuts for the wealthy with cuts to programs supporting job training, access to higher education, affordable housing, and food security. The 1996 Welfare Reform Act law ended welfare as an entitlement. Now, wait a minute. You mentioned what Reagan did. The Reagan administration paired tax cuts, and that's absolutely true. Your next line should have been the Clinton administration welfare reform law ended welfare as an entitlement program, required recipients to work after 2 years of benefits, and place a lifetime limit of 5 years on those benefits. That should have been the next sentence. You see how language is so important. It's so important because they went from, they tagged it on Reagan, rightly so, but they did not tag it on Clinton. But Clinton did that. So you would see, if they put Reagan right there and Clinton right there, you would say this is a bipartisan problem in terms of what happened to welfare. But because they didn't, it's hard to really see it. It's hard to really see it. It's hard to really understand what is happening and how it's happening. So let me just pull this chart up, this chart right here. Make this a little bit bigger. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. You got to be careful how people use language. People really obscure everything. These cuts to cash assistance programs led to increases in deep poverty among families with children, even as refundable tax credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit blunted some of their effects. The richest Americans have received the largest tax cuts. Oh, this is the Piketty one. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and this is also the do for selferism problem, right? Because the most tax cuts have gone to a specific group, and nobody tells that group of wealthy people, you wrong for getting the money. You should just, I don't know, you took a handout from the government. That's an awful thing to do. You shouldn't have done it. You don't, nobody needs a handout, and I just want to go get mine out of the mud. I don't like being in the mud. I don't mind that phrase because I do mind it. So I don't like to lie. Like, I was convicted inside myself when I said I don't mind it. I do. But the problem is, like, you talk about getting stuff out the mud. Well, the problem is, like, why did you end up in the mud? Like, you know, what happened in your life or your lineage that you ended up in the mud and you got to get up out the mud? That's just basic. That's just something basic to understand. And if it's unfair that you're in the mud, if government assisted in not only putting you in the mud, but when other people pressed you down in the mud, the government, even though it has a responsibility to help, said, we need a bottom caste in this country. And it looks like you're it. Right? The government has a responsibility. We don't talk about that. Here we go. And here we go again. I'm just going to go through it a little bit because sometimes you got to go through this. I'm going to come to it, fam. You got to, just go to that second paragraph. Just go to this second paragraph. The resources available are just not accessible to everyone, especially black and brown people and women. You see, these throwaway terms, fam, language is important. What do you mean black and brown and women? What does that mean? White women, brown, what is that? This cobbling together. That's what you see. You see it throughout this report. You cannot talk about us with any level of specificity. People have decided that we're all the same. That is called shoehorning into our justice claim. That's what you got to call it. It is shoehorning into something that does not belong to you. It is shoehorning into a justice claim that is not yours. It is lineal theft. That's what it is. It is lineal theft that is not, you got to talk about you. You got to build your own movement. That's what I said. I said this before on, I think I was on Patreon. I said, listen, I don't have a problem. And I think somebody called in, faked their voice. You know, people do weird stuff. But I think you have to be, you just have to be very careful. Because people will say, well, they right. They can be with us. You can be with us on a lot of things. There's a lot of places where you can be with us. But just not reparations and our specific justice claim. Because it took a lot to build this movement. And you have to do that yourself. You have to build your own movement. When you do that, well, I don't care whether it's an anti-imperialism program or how, you know, reparations for whatever country. Then you can come back and say, hey, we built our program. Can we talk now? But you can't just come in and step into our program. You can't just come in and step into our lineage. There is no black and brown. I don't even think there's a brown. I think they're El Salvadorians. I think there are Mexicans. I think there are I think there are Ecuadorians. I think there are all kind of people. I think there are I think there are Afghans. I think there are all kinds of people that come from all kinds of places with a different background, and each one of them made a different, if any, contribution to America and has a different background and comes from a different country, and all that needs to be taken into account. There is no black and brown. That's kind of a dumbing down of a lot of stuff. Looks like there is no black. That's how people get confused. Wait a minute, we all Africans, we all black. You get confused. You'll have an African dictator oppressor who oppresses his own people, and you'll think he's on your side because he's black. No, he's not. And you'll have a whole elite caste over there who you think they on my side. No, they're not. They are oppressors in their own world. Just like racist institutions and lawmakers do here, they're that for their people. That's because they're African doesn't change that. The way we talk about things, the way we analyze things, it matters in terms of how we do politics. Let me bring up something else. And I want to bring up this quote to access to capital, starting, growing, and sustaining your business. Now here goes Ocasio-Cortez. Y'all know y'all like AOC. Woo. Thankfully, there is broad bipartisan support for small businesses in the United States, but oftentimes we see that we don't. Oh, that sentence is wrong. We see that we don't treat all small businesses equally, depending on who starts them or what kind of businesses you are. You don't often get access to policies. You don't get access to capital, and sometimes you are just not even treated favorably, whether it is by your municipal government or your federal government. Now here we go again. Let's go to the bottom. We back at the same problem again. We back at it. Studies have found that there is less business lending in poor neighborhoods and neighborhoods where majority are Black or Latino. Can't talk about one without talking about the other. But it's very interesting. It's just very interesting. You know, I think at some point we should really get into, because even in the housing part here, you see like some reference when they talked about Milwaukee. Let me bring it up. I'm gonna bring this up first because they talk about redlining and do something very interesting. They say because of redlining, residents of Milwaukee who weren't considered white, is Black residents and members of ethnic minorities who were then considered undesirables by the majority culture face increasingly inadequate living conditions and poorly funded schools. Now here's the thing, they don't really go into who those undesirables were too much, but it's a problem because a lot of these people were considered white. And even if you had a one-off, that's an aberration. That doesn't mean you're part of our group. That means something happened to this group. I mean, something happened to this particular homeowner. By 1950s, Milwaukee was among the most racially segregated cities in America, despite the general decline in segregation in the United States. Since 2000. In 2018, Milwaukee had the highest level of Black-white segregation. This is just very interesting, though, how they set it up to begin with. And so, if you bring in the census from 1790 to 2010, you see, like, for a long time, well, we know a lot of Mexicans fought to be white, and we're going to get to that. But what you also see here is a lot of y'all who call, like, you weren't counted. Like, if the United States government doesn't distinguish you as a specific group, right? Like, how were you discriminated against? Right? Or if you were white, how can you say I was white and I was discriminated against at the same time? Or the government recognized you. For those of you all who read the book on Chinese immigration, right? They weren't seen as Black people. I saw a racist the other day, a clip of a racist saying, well, we would do better if we were living around. We're okay with the Chinese or the Italians. We're just not okay with the Blacks. That's what she said. And there's some revisionist history, because if you go right here, you look at 1790, you see slaves, free white people, slaves, free whites, all other free persons. And you go down to the bottom and look at like 1800, 1820. You see various groups, right? Okay, let's move on. Free whites, slaves, free colored persons. This is how the census was counting, right? So you go all the way up here. Now we can take it all the way. We take it to 1870. Okay, here we are, right? So that's where we are. So we had a long time where it's just this. Okay, let's move on though. Let's move out of the 1800s and into the 1900s and see what the census was doing and who was counted. What year is this? So that's 1910. So 1910, Chinese, Black, Negro, mulatto, white, other. Then they got Chinese, Filipino, Japanese. That's Korean. You could classify as Mexicans, but you could choose if the Mexicans fought very hard to be included as white people. I just don't see these other groups though. Let's see down here. I don't see the groups that were talking. Like they said the Jewish people discriminated against. They said Italians. I just don't see that. Let's see. Filipino, Japanese, Black, Negro. It's not a lot going on now here. It's very interesting to look at this kind of stuff though, because it just shows like how people came in, when they came in, and that sort of thing. And I don't know if there was if there wasn't a distinction made. I just don't see how you were being discriminated against. And let's go right to 1930, and let's go see what was instructions to 1930 census takers on counting people by race. Write M for male, write F for female, right? That's counting by sex, color, or race. Write W for white, NEG for Negro, Mex for Mexicans, Indian for Indian, CH for Chinese, JP for Japanese, F for whatever, Filipino, etc., etc. Here's the other thing. If you were still treated as white, even though your origin was recognized, you could still go and live. You know, we remember the story of the African man with the turban who was treated like a white person and not treated like Adolf just because he wore a turban. No, he was a preacher with a turban, I think. What was he? He might have been Adolf, but he disguised himself so he could go through the trains and stuff. He wore a turban. So nobody would know, like, oh my God, that's a Negro. They thought he was foreign. Negroes, a person of mixed white and Negro blood should be returned as a Negro, no matter how small the percentage of Negro blood. Both black and mulatto persons are to be returned as Negroes without distinction. A person of mixed Indian and Negro blood should be returned as Negro unless the Indian blood predominates and the status as the Indian is generally accepted as in the community. Well, they let the Indians decide who was Negro. Child. Now, wait a minute. So if the Indian decided, no, that's an Indian, that was okay? Whew. This is quite a kerfuffle. This thing we got going on here, this race thing that's quite a kerfuffle, child. Now, one of the things you got to look at, they talked all this stuff. Oh, they didn't get the GI Bill and you know, that's Negro stuff. Then they talked about the class stuff, right? Everybody's not going to get enough of what they got, but they talked about us too. They had very specific things to say about us, and they said something. Let's just go back. They said something about how you have to disaggregate. This is something you got to disaggregate. You can't just talk about people in groups. Well, the whole point of talking about like disaggregating doesn't make any sense if you're not going to. The whole thing that disaggregating does is it breaks the groups apart, right? So when you break the groups apart, the point of breaking these groups apart and disaggregating is to say, hey, this group needs more resources. Oh my God, look at what happened to this group because of slavery. It didn't happen to nobody else. The whole point of disaggregating is so you can see who we are, see what we've been through, right? And then make an assessment about how to fix it. And when you do that, we know that the only way to fix it is through reparations and a transformative black agenda. That's all there is to it. But we always get the old bait and the old switch. So one of the things, and I'm just going to point to this real quick, one of the things they come back with is an down payment for first generation home buyers. Now, another thing that you always got to look at, family, when they come back with stuff like this, a down payment assistance program aimed at helping those from less economically secure backgrounds to make a down payment on a home ownership would expand wealth building opportunities for a greater share of Americans, right? The benefit of the down payment assistance would particularly valuable to Black Americans and other racial and ethnic minorities. Well, wait a minute, hold on a second. This says a down payment for first generation home buyers. Now, first of all, whenever they say that, you got to know that there's a bill that goes with it. Whenever somebody says something, go look for the bill that goes with it, because they're normally supporting something that already exists rather than trying to put something else in play. But wait a minute, what if you're not a first generation home buyer, but you're ADOS? Right? A down payment. Look how it's sold. Listen, they use us to sell everything. Whatever they want to sell. Down payment towards Equity Act of 2021 will help address the U.S. racial wealth and homeownership gaps by providing $100 billion towards down payment. Wait a minute, a first generation. Well, what if your What if your parents and your grandparents own homes? Like, I don't get nothing because I'm not a first generation home buyer? I don't get anything. I mean, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure this out. Yep, I remember the Chinese lady who fought to get her kids away from the black kids. All these people who want to claim minority and BIPOC now was fighting to get away from Negroes. Now here's the bill itself. Right? This is just a draft version. But I mean, and that's always what they are. It's not a bill. It ain't even no law yet. So, but the home buyer is as self-attested by the home buyer, an individual whose parents or legal guardian do not have present residential ownership interest in any state. So wait a minute. Whose parents or legal guardians do not have any present residential ownership in any state. This seems to me that you're saying you're not favoring all ADOS. So my parents own a home, right? Do your parents own a home? So if you're ADOS and you own and you have a parent who owns a home, you're not a first generation home buyer. Somebody who just got here though would be a first generation home buyer. So it's not favoring me. So why are you talking about the racial wealth gap? Because you're doing nothing specific to this lineage. This is really a lineage wealth gap, and that's what you'd be trying to fix. This general policy thing where listen, I said it before, but class don't fix race and race don't fix lineage. There's no way to do it. Like, that's a bait and switch in this whole report. And you'll see it all the time. I just want everybody to start watching for that. Just please start watching for the bait and switch, because that's what's happening. They just bait and switch you. All this stuff about interstate equality and the roads and all that stuff, they just bait and switch. Bait and switch. More black and brown. What are we doing? Now I want you to pay particularly attention to this. You gotta read these things and know. You gotta know you being scammed. First generation home buyer. The legacies of now pay attention now. The legacies of past federal discrimination policies discussed earlier in this report still resonate in concentrations of urban poverty today. America's separate and unequal neighborhoods did not evolve naturally or result from unfettered market forces, the Urban Institute notes. Rather, they resulted from plans, policies, and practices of racial exclusion and divestment that primarily target black people and laid the foundation for the segregation of other people of color. Ladies and gentlemen, I need you to be specific, because if you're going to tell me that what happened to us was just something that laid the foundation, I need to see it. I want to see a bunch of reports on how all these other groups were discriminated against. Because what's happening is that what we went through is being, I've said it plenty of times, but we're kind of looked at like dark matter. You know how they just figured out that dark matter exists? And it's kind of like somebody said, I don't know whether it's true, I'm not a physicist. It's kind of like a glue or something in the universe. That's this dark matter. We know it's there, and it helps everything else be what it's supposed to be in the universe. Dark matter. Well, the problem is that that's kind of who we are. So we exist so that you can grow out of us and do something. So we exist for you to kind of harvest us, but we can never reap our own rewards. So we exist as something that you can catapult from and catapult up out of, but we don't exist for our own benefit. You got to tell me who, because listen, because this is why you got to tell me. This is why you got to tell me. You got to tell me because of this. This is revisionist history. And let me tell you why you got to tell me. I don't mean no disrespect, but you got to tell me what groups you talking about. Because if you look at Mendez versus Westminster, you're going to find something very specific. And what you're going to find is that this case, and this is Mendez, this is Mexican versus the school, right? This case permit segregation of colored segregation of colored children. It is directly contrary to section, what is that, 8003 of the Education Code of California, and no authority to segregate white children on the basis of consent. Children of Mexican descent are white and Caucasian, not colored. They're fighting. This was them fighting to be white. This was Mexicans fighting to be white. So don't tell me that our discrimination led to people of color. And the biggest people of color I'm thinking you're talking about are people right south of the border. Well, if they were fighting to be white and they won, I think they won. Y'all look that up. George L. Sanchez, who worked on the case, was asked if the Mendez decision could have any influence on Brown v. Board of Education. And he exclaimed, no, there is no connection. Unlike Brown, the Mendez never sought to challenge legal segregation in itself. The overriding issue in Mendez was that Mexicans were white children who were being arbitrarily segregated from other whites in the absence of any state or federal law for their alleged language handicap. Does the present case attack Negro segregation where there is no law decreeing such segregation? Only in such a case would we be concerned. Since segregation for African American children was legal, that was not of their concern in Mendez, and made the case ultimately unrelated. Thank you, fam. They won. Yeah, they want to be white. Listen, you got to make Mexicans white again. I'm sorry. You got to make Mexicans white again. You got to make minorities white again. You just got to, because because part of the reason we can't get people to see us, and part of the reason, listen, you always gonna have whites that's gonna white and just be racist. That was when it was just Negro and whites. Nobody's saying that. But part of the reason white people are so confused is because everybody get to claim everything. You got to make minorities white again. You got to make Mexicans white again. You got to make everybody white again because you fought to be white. You can't fight to be white when it's beneficial to be white, and then when it's beneficial to be ADOS, you want to fight to be ADOS. We should have been doing that. They owe us a refund too. We owe reparations for Mexicans because you all have shoehorned into everything that is our justice claim, even though you fought not to be a part of it. You can't fight to be white and then tell me you're black or you people of color, you whatever. This is not about melanin. If that is your case, you keep that case. Language barrier is not my problem. Child. And I asked because I was like, did they win? I was like, I might have remembered that wrong. But really and truthfully, it wouldn't have even mattered if they won or lost. Because it's all about what you fighting for. Why are you fighting? Are you fighting to be white? You're saying that, listen, we're not them Negroes. We're white, and you can't discriminate against us and put us anywhere. You got to put us with white kids. We white. That whole book's written about this. And it's an abdication of responsibility that we still allow these kind of reports to be written and this kind of thing to happen. Majority of Latinos say their race is white. They're white. Stop calling them people of color. They're white. Look at the chart. I'm just, this is them talking. I didn't put a gun in nobody's head. I didn't make nobody say nothing. Percentage of Latino adults saying their race. Right? Majority say white. Some say other. Whatever. Listen, child. It's ADOS and everybody else has got to figure it out. But y'all white. You fought to be white. You said let the Negro fight their own fight. And so here we are. Ain't nothing nobody can do about it. There's nothing we can do about what y'all fought to be. Now it's very interesting. The report does a lot of bait and switch with us, and it gives us a lot of class stuff, right? It gives us a lot of class-based solutions. It gives us a lot of people of color and blacks and Latino. And stuff that's really class to fix race. It gives us a lot of that. But when you talk about Native economic empowerment for Native Americans, something is very different. And let me tell you one thing that sticks out to me when the government talks about Native Americans as opposed to when they talk about us. One thing that sticks out for me is that they give Native Americans agency to represent themselves and tell the government what they want and what they need. So let me just read a little bit of this out to you. Oh, we can probably pull this all the way over since that's mostly a image. The committee, joined by Native American Caucus co-chair Representative Sharice Davids, subject matter experts, and Native American leaders, held a roundtable to examine barriers and pathways for Native American communities to cultivate sustainable economic development and growth. You know? Development and growth. All right. Hold on a second. Now I got to make it small again. Oof. Experts and leaders provided key recommendations, foremost among them to respect and expand. And I understand the Native Americans are sovereign. I understand that, but I'm still saying, whether you're sovereign or not, there still has to be some leadership and some agency, as opposed to this class-based mess. Experts and leaders provided key recommendations, foremost among them to respect and expand self-governance of tribal governments, emphasizing that they are best positioned to serve their communities and should directly receive and administer federal funding. Right? The leaders also propose strategies to tailor current federal policies for facilitating flow of capital, economic diversifications, and collection of and data collection on tribal lands. And lastly, let me just say this: anytime you see this Negro right here anywhere near a policy, you know it's bad. I'm sorry. I don't mean no disrespect, but anytime you see this man near a policy or a policy proposal, it's just you might as well just go. We got baby bonds again, so you know I don't know. You got baby bonds coming up again, so you know we're gonna fix race with all this class. It's just not gonna work, fam. And you just gotta learn to. You gotta look out for these reports first of all. You just gotta look out for them and just know how to kind of pick them apart, because it's important to do that. It's important to know why some stuff is just sacred. Your justice claim is sacred. Nobody should be able to shoehorn into that and say, well, me too. It's like the Me Too movement of people with melanin, and a lot of people don't have melanin. The people who classify as white and the people without melanin, right? It's like a Me Too. Me too, that happened to me too. I can find one court, I can find one time, I can find 10 times. Well, wait a minute. That still means that 99.999% of the time it happened to us. But me too. No, they're going to Me Too their way into reparations and everything else. This is erasure. And if you don't understand that this is erasure, you're going to have a really hard time. Because pretty soon it's not going to be, journalists are going to get tired of writing black and Latino, black and Hispanic, black and minority. They're gonna just start writing BIPOC. Right? They already say now half time just people of color. How you gonna say people of color when all these Hispanics classify as white? Well, I'm Hispanic. You just that's just a spicy name. There's no meaning to it. Just like there's no meaning to minority. Minority is just, what does that mean? There's no meaning to it. Part of figuring this thing out too is figuring out a language that makes sense. The reason American descendants of slavery, the institution, makes absolute sense is because we're American. We descend from people who were enslaved and multi-generationally oppressed. We're American descendants of slavery. That's why it makes sense. That's why it caught fire, right? The language matters, and it sounds a way, right? The language that you use matters. The language that they're using is erasure, because they're going to get to just BIPOC or people of color. And you won't be able to distinguish anything. And we have to force that. Listen, if you see a journalist or something, like people ask, well, what can I do before the chapter's lunch? If you see when the chapter's lunch, absolutely join. That's your responsibility. Not to me. That's your responsibility to your kids. That's your responsibility to your grandkids. That's responsibility to yourself. But even before that, you could write. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You could write a letter to the editor. Hey, don't stop doing this. To the editor and the writer, stop this. This thing where you just kind of merge two groups together. And sometimes you can actually pull data. Like there was one time there was data that showed they were talking about the school to prison pipeline. And the data showed that nearly all of the kids they were kicking out of school were black boys. So, and they were saying blacks and Latino, and you could absolutely pull that out and say, listen, you are doing, this is lazy work, this is lazy journalism. You should not include Latinos in that, because these are nearly all black boys, and you've just trained yourself. You all have just trained yourself to lazily say that, because one of the things that has to happen, we have to disaggregate the data, and we have to change the language, because these are two distinct groups, and you have to get busy doing that and understanding what these projects are for. And you have to look at, yes, they can say race. They said race all through this thing, all through this. If you get a chance, to remember, this is the study or whatever. They said race all through this thing, and got to the end and started talking about baby bonds, not reparations. We got whole reparations movements and stuff. They didn't even mention that old pitiful HR 40. We got whole movements. They went over the baby bonds and infrastructure. We got the first, we're gonna do first generation home buy act. Yeah. I think the Maxine Waters is a sponsor of that. Whew. Cha. I'm telling you. Well, anyway, fam, let me take a break. And I'll be back in a second. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But before I go, the one thing that you just gotta know, that you just gotta do. You gotta, people gotta be white. Like, everybody just can't, like, this lineage is built on something. And it's built on something that doesn't exist with any other group. And they just got to go be themselves, and we got to be ourselves. But you can't just shoehorn into this. Well, we became, no, we are who we are. Nobody else is this. Nobody else has this in their history. Consistently. Throughout. Government mandated. Nobody. And I don't think we understand it. And everybody else is eating off of it. We're ashamed of it. It's crazy to be in this kind of space where we're ashamed of, something that everybody else is using to benefit themselves, right? So it's you got to understand that part of the reason that they want you to be ashamed of your lineage is so they can come in and take advantage of it. Listen, they trying to get away from who they are. I can come in and tell them they're African. I can come in and tell them that they shouldn't want a handout. I can come in and tell these people anything because they're ashamed of who they are. If you walk into it, you realize I deserve a lot. I deserve a lot for what my people endured. I deserve a lot for them building the country. I deserve a lot. Like, there's a lot owed, and I should be up here on the hierarchy. But if you don't walk straight into that thing with clear eyes, you'll never see it. And everybody else will eat off something that you built. So it's decision time. It's go time. Anyway, fam, let me take a break, and I'll be right back. are back. We are back, fam. Let me tell y'all something. Let me tell you something. You know how they say everybody does that stuff. The revolution will not be won here. The revolution will not be won here. I can guarantee. I can't guarantee a lot, but I can guarantee that the revolution will not be won on Twitter Spaces. I can guarantee you that we will not get revolution from Twitter Spaces. These reports and this advocacy, woo-wee, that's a lot, but that's the work. That's the work to be done. It makes you feel good to get on Twitter Spaces and say, I tell you what I'm gonna do. Yeah, but at the end of the day, what is that? I mean, you just gotta think about your time and think about, the usefulness of certain things, right? So I don't even know. So I'm going to go to my first caller. I'm going to 804. 804, what's your name? Where you calling from? And what is on your mind?
Hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, Yvette. My name is Jason Austin. I live in Kansas City, Missouri currently, and what I wanted to say is, I had a little bit of an epiphany listening to you tonight, and I'm thankful for it.
Oh. Okay.
So if I can share a little bit of my story, I'll try to keep it brief.
You're breaking up just a little bit. You're breaking up just a little bit.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said you're breaking up just a little bit for me.
Let me see if I can.
Make like a tree. No.
All right. Hey, let me see if I can get to a different part of the house here. All right, is this better?
It is for me, yes.
Say it again.
It's better. It's better.
Okay, great. So yeah, I wanted to just, I had an epiphany and I just wanted to kind of share it real quick. So I work in Library and Information Sciences, or LIS, and we are currently going through this diversity revolution and everything, and people are embracing the BIPOC label and all of that mess. But the epiphany that I had listening to you tonight is that BIPOC actually is melting pot rhetoric. It really is. And all of these people who are talking about, in higher ed especially, and I work as an academic librarian, what is going on is all of these people are steady talking about, well, we want the salad bowl approach versus the melting pot approach because we're all burning in the melting pot and that doesn't allow us to have our identities. But really what BIPOC does is BIPOC is actually a melting pot that white people are exempted from, which is crazy. And so to just see our people embrace this, and the black people in my field, they love it. I hear BIPOC or black and brown when people are specifically talking about black people all the time. It drives me nuts. But what I say about that is like, it's the black people especially who are always talking about don't erase us. And yet they're joining on to this BIPOC thing where the white people are saying, okay, black, indigenous, and everybody else, you all are now this. And yes, it is a melting pot, and they don't even have to participate in it, but we're participating in it, and it is obscuring our own issues. And so I just wanted to share that tonight and say I'm so thankful for it.
And I appreciate it, but let me throw one thing at you. I don't even think that we're in the melting pot. And I think Dr. Cosby said this one time. I think I got this from him because I don't like to take anything from anybody. I think I got it from him. I think Dr. Cosby said that. I agree. I think we are the fire underneath that keeps the soup pot, the melting pot soup pot, right? And that keeps it going and keeps it alive. We are the fire. So as long as we burn, everybody else can cook.
Thank you so much.
No,
I am going to get off the phone to put my baby to sleep, but I just had to share it, and you have been on fire tonight, and I thank you so much for the work you do.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I appreciate you, and I always love epiphanies. So, I'm going right now to 310. 310, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. This is Kevin calling from Los Angeles. How are you?
Pretty good, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I try to listen as often as I can. I get most of your notifications. And I wanted to touch on something you brought up about Westminster and Mendez. I feel like I'm a student when I listen to you on the broadcast, and I really just chime in just to learn as much as I can. But when you spoke on Westminster and Mendez, immediately I began to think, wasn't Thurgood Marshall on the legal team that helped them win? And the issue I have with that question is, and like I say, I'm still learning, but the issue I have with that is, it reminded me of the suffrage movement and how the white women were fighting to get everything they were trying to get. But as soon as Ida B. Wells tried to join the team, they didn't want her. Say, you can't join us because you'll mess us up because you're black. The black women can't come help us do what we're trying to do. So the question I'm trying to ask, Yvette, is, it seems like it's like a political gamesmanship happening. Like, did Thurgood Marshall know that they were fighting to be white, or was he on some other issue that he had to help them win in order to do something else for what he was fighting for? That's the question I'm trying to ask.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I would love to read what he said about that, because you cooking. You cooking right now, Carla. I would love to read. I would love to read that, because I didn't even know that. You called me cold. You called me flat-footed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Y'all look that up. Look that up in the chat. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Carla.
Look, Yvette, listen. I'm a new student. I went back to school at 49, and I'm about to graduate at 53. And I just learned that recently. I learned that in all these different cases, I learned that Thurgood Marshall was specifically involved in Westminster versus Mendez. So after listening to you tonight, that aroused my curiosity. And I was like, well, if what Yvette is saying is true, then why was Thurgood Marshall involved in helping them? So I'm trying to understand more about the case
and especially
and about why Thurgood was involved, because it makes me think that there's more to it. It makes me think that there's more to these issues than what we might see on the surface.
Well, I think it could be. Sometimes people try to be like, well, they're trying to say that, they're white, and if they're white, maybe we can be white or whatever. You never can tell. But it will be interesting to see what Thurgood says about it, but especially considering the quotes from that. Like, they made it clear, like, this ain't got nothing to do with the Negroes. So especially when you look at those kinds of anti-ADOS quotes, it's just very interesting. But is that any different, Carla, than what we see today? Like, let me ask you a question, because we see leaders today, and I don't know, like I said, that what I just gave right there is a generous interpretation of what Thurgood did, right? And I said, I don't know, I'm gonna look it up, I'm gonna read about it. But if I were to go in the other direction, though, and give you a less generous interpretation, I would say, isn't that what our leaders do today? Mistake some people who are not on their side as being on their side and help out, right? And there may have been a deeper legal interpretation that I'm not a lawyer, I'm not getting. But I wonder, because there are generous and there are much less generous interpretations of that.
Okay, and that's fair. I was just triggered back to the stuff I had been learning in school based on what you said, and I said, well, okay, that sounds like the quid pro quo. I think it's called, where you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
And then we never got to scratch.
Right. Where in the civil rights movement, when they had Bayard Rustin helping them out, but as soon as some people who didn't like LGBTQ heard that Bayard Rustin was in it, they contacted the King camp, and said, "Hey, listen, you got to get Bayard Rustin out of there." Mm-hmm. So it seems like every movement has some sort of political jockeying happening.
Yep.
Back to the women's suffrage. Back to the women's suffrage movement. The white women were fighting for what they wanted, and the black women wanted to help get in to help that thing get passed. Mm-hmm. But then the people on the the white women on the women's suffrage side said, no, we can't have the black women help us because it's a racial issue. We're trying not to make it a racial issue. We're trying to make it what white women are fighting for. So it seems like every movement has some type of underlying stuff.
Well, could that be, caller? And I agree with you. Could that be? There are a lot of reasons and particulars, but could that be, caller, because of a sort of not well-defined solidarity, an ill-defined solidarity, if you will? Is it the case that
Absolutely.
we sort of go along with people based on your word, and whatever, like a handshake deal? Well, part of the problem with a handshake deal is that the other person has to have integrity, because you have to believe that everybody's going to abide by the deals of the handshake. And when it's us, people always say, "I scratch your back, you scratch mine." Well, we always scratch other people's backs, and then we just get left itching.
Absolutely, that's it. Look, Yvette. I love you. I love the show. I got to get off so I can hear the rest of the show.
All right, fam. I appreciate you. You have a good one, all right?
You too.
Let me go to my next call. I'm going to 617. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
This is Alonzo Johnson from Boston. My wife said hi. Yeah,
Till I said hey. What's your wife's name?
Now, Shamika. Miss Ginyard.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
All right. You was talking about the way people identify themselves tonight and being specific, and it made me think about something I was talking to my therapist about.
Okay.
And I said that honestly, if you just take a look at life, we all are just bearing witness against ourselves. And what I mean by that is that the same thing that you said, that if you've been identifying as white for the last 15, 20, 30 years, then that's what you is. You claim that. So don't try to change it now because you see something different happening on the other side. But I just call to say that we all just really bearing witness against ourselves. It's a matter of if you honest with yourself or if you running around here with believing in things that are not true. So I appreciate your show tonight. I appreciate what y'all do, and me and my wife, we're gonna continue to support y'all to the wheels fall off.
Oh, I appreciate you, fam. Look at that, black love. Adolph's love now. All right, have a good one, fam. I appreciate you. Oh, that's a nice title for a book. Somebody gonna steal that. We are bearing witness against ourselves. That's a great title. I like that. 215. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yeah, Yvette. I have to do a bit of pushback, right?
Sure.
Now, when you make a statement like you said, they're lazy journalists, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't think they're lazy journalists.
Okay.
I don't think that their mistakes are due to incompetence. I think it's just straight up deception, and they're just liars.
Ooh.
And I hear this also from Tone as well, where it's like, oh, well, these people, they're incompetent, or they don't know what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about. They're lying. They're being deceptive, and they're lying. They are not lazy journalists. They may be lazy ethically. They may be lazy morally. They may be lazy in terms of having any morals. But I don't think that they're lazy. I think that when they say BIPOC, and when they say the example that you gave about school to prison pipeline, black and brown, the majority of the boys being expelled were black, I think they knew that. I also think that they knew that just focusing on being honest about it being black boys is not going to get them the same reaction or get them the same cachet as saying black and brown.
I agree. But I agree, but pause right there for 1 second for me. I think one of the reasons, I shouldn't say the reason, because it's not the only reason. I think one of the reasons it won't get them the same cachet is when they write about black people and don't write about brown people push back and say, this happens to us too. And so I think part of the thing is, I think part of it comes from up high. I don't want to say that because I don't have no evidence, but I think part of it is driven by people with an agenda, right? But the other part about it is it came to be a point when you start talking about just black people will push back and say, hey, what about us? Like, I heard that for years before they start happening. What about us? What about us? And so there's also some acquiescing to a narrative that's ahistorical. But go on, I just want to add that.
Oh, no, I agree, but I think that's different from being incompetent or being lazy from a standpoint. I think that's lazy from a ethical standpoint. They know what they're saying. They know they're being deceptive. They know they're being manipulative. They're doing it for a reason, and the reason is not because they lack the journalistic gravitas to do it correctly.
Yeah. Well, I guess and I don't disagree with you. I guess what I would say though is when you reach out to them, you can't say, "Hey, I know you're doing this because you know." You can say that like this is wrong, right? You can say that like because I can't prove to you what you don't know, but I can prove to you that you're wrong. I can't prove to you that like I believe you. I do believe that they're operating on something. If not other than in addition to ignorance, right? I do believe that something else is afoot. But in terms of how I reach out to that journalist, I can just tell them like this isn't right the way you're doing it, because I can't tell you what I think you are doing and what I think you know. I mean, because the way we have been castigated and smeared, leads me to believe that there is absolutely something afoot that just doesn't want to see any type of success in the ADOS political arena.
Well, I think that gives cover for them to continue to do it. I think that provides an easy excuse for them to do it. Mm-hmm. And they can't prove that they're doing it because they're just piss poor, but they're just very bad journalists. But if they were that bad at journalism, I don't think that they could have gotten to the position that they were at. I don't think they could have gotten out of journalism school. I think you're just saying. But again, I think at some point this has to be confronted from perspective. And I know again, I understand due to liability issues, due to different legal reasons why you wouldn't want to go into that side of it. But at this point, it's frustrating to me because it's like they can't keep making this mistake. They can't make, like, again, the Harvard thing. It was so blatant that it's like these people can't be that incompetent at their job to feel as if though you never addressed COVID. That's just a certain. It's no way they can be that blind.
It's just basic. It's basic research.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's basic 8th grade research. It's not a complex thing to figure that out. Like, it's not like it's this is not even calculus. It's just basic research.
Right. Or another example, I went over a article about Karen Bass in which the journalist spoke to some black men that didn't know who the black men she spoke to were, and she didn't
You breaking up, I think, Colin. Yeah, you breaking up. But I would agree with you. What you say? Okay. I can hear you now.
Happy holidays.
All right. I appreciate it, fam. 240, I think. I'm coming to you, and I think we'll end it there. 240.
Hey, good evening, Ms. Cornell. How are you?
Pretty good. How about you?
Hey, I'm well, thank you. My name is Jonathan calling from D.C. area.
Okay.
And I found your show very interesting this evening. So I'm actually an attorney as well, specifically in criminal defense. And something that you mentioned was about how, and you were talking about in the case where, and I don't recall the exact case name, but what you were looking at was they cited the language barrier being the issue, not so much the racial barrier when compared to Brown v. Board of Education. And I think you were saying the attorney in that case had made the argument or was argued somewhere that it doesn't impact Brown because these individuals weren't looking at a racial issue, but more so a language issue and how it's viewed as a disability. And I just wanted to kind of, give a second to that because I remember when I first started practicing, the charging documents of varying races, right, varying groups of people, pardon me. And I found it very intriguing just looking at those documents because you would see, certain individuals come to court and they would be, let's say, from the country of India, or they would be from Ethiopia, or they would be from, El Salvador. And these individuals would be of dark complexion, but party document, they would be listed as white with a color of other. So the reason I bring up this is, and I really think that, within our community, we take a certain view on race as it pertains to color, when honestly the rest of the world does not do that. And when they come, and when people come to the United States, they really want to adopt the privilege of the Caucasians and the white people here, despite their color, and they care less about, the idea of being darker than, someone, let's just say, of West African descent. They look at it as, when I come to this country, I should be privileged as whatever the race power is deemed to be. I should be classified as white, and I should be recognized as white. And that's kind of my perception of what I gleaned from your show today. I just wanted to, say that. I mean, you're seeing that in court and charging documents, even in major members of the city.
Oh, thank you for calling in. Thank you for calling in. Why? And I think they want to be white, but be able to access ADOS privilege and set asides in terms of affirmative action and all that kind of other. I want to be able to mark African American while being able to access the privilege of whiteness in the world. So I want to use your privilege to go to school, go to college, or whatever, but also be able to be considered white.
Exactly.
Double dip.
Exactly. Hey, thank you very much for introducing this topic. I think it was very informative, and I think it did definitely open a lot of people's eyes to, how other people don't necessarily look at their color. They have a whole entirely disposition where someone could be darker than someone. Hey, I'm actually in this country.
Exactly, fam. I appreciate you.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
You have a great one as well. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. Sometimes I just wonder, like, how do we get here? Like, how do we get here from Thurgood being a hell of a lawyer to him saying Thurgood was on the case? If we don't, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna figure that out though. We gotta figure that out. These are interesting political little investigations. But yeah, I'm sure they have a theory. But sometimes I just wonder, how do we get here? Like, how do we get to this place where, like, we've been here before everybody, and now we're at the bottom of the stack, right? And you still can't get people to understand it. You still have Negroes be the first one. If I thought, listen, if another Negro was trying to do something that was going to benefit me and my people, even if I didn't necessarily agree or I disagree with something, I wouldn't even really talk about it. Like, it's just like reparations is a debt that's old, and you feel the need to put your uninformed mouth on it. Like, what's wrong with everybody? Like, and so if I guess I answered my own question, how do we get here? We got a lot of Negroes like that. We got a lot of Negroes that's just gonna run and get the bag. We got a lot of Negroes that, hey, collective uplift. No, what's that? You gotta get it how you live. Get it out the mud. Okay, well, good luck in the mud. Pigs be in the mud. That's who like to. Why are you in the mud? Oh, Yvette, I don't know. Anyway, fam, I appreciate it. I will be, let me see, tomorrow, Patreon. So tomorrow, 10:15, Patreon to the people on Patreon. Don't forget, everybody, or the Patreon people, don't forget Monday I will not There will be no show Monday. That's I think it's the day after Christmas. So don't forget, if you're on Patreon, I will not be there on Monday. But we will have the regular show tomorrow. Please hit the like button if you are here. As usual on YouTube, next week we do the Wednesday as usual. So if you are here, fam, please hit that like button for me. Please hit that like button. If you have not hit it already. And if you are new and you just kind of fell through here, got recommended to you or something, please hit the subscribe button before you leave, fam. And I will see you all next time. All right? Keep it easy breezy. Don't bother nobody. Don't let nobody bother you. Finish your libation and get yourself some rest.